Welcome to We Politics, brought to you by the Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board. I'm your host, Rob Miller. During this series, we will be talking with the candidates in Windsor and Essex ridings. All 17 candidates have been invited. We will be talking with Laura Chesnik after a word from our sponsor.
Passionate about a particular sport? Would you like to combine it with your education? Are you thinking about a career in one of the many rewarding construction-related trades? Do you love subjects like science, technology, engineering, or math? Take a look at the academies of the Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board. You'll be glad you did. And years from now, you'll look back on your high school days as the best times of your life. The academies of the Windsor Essex Catholic District School Board. We're with you all the way.
Laura Chesnik is the candidate for the Marist Leninist Party in Windsor Tecumseh. She is a veteran politician. She's run in at least 4 federal elections. She is also, her day job is an elementary school teacher. Welcome.
Thank you.
Why do you want to be a member of Parliament?
Well, I want to be a member of Parliament because I think we should speak for ourselves. As you mentioned, I'm an elementary teacher, and a lot of these decisions that affect education and affect our whole lives are not those people who are actually in the field, who are teaching, for example, or doing those professions, are in the Parliament making those decisions. And so that's why I'm running.
How would you do that? Other Marxist-Leninist candidates have said that. Don't we elect representatives to do that for us?
Well, we do that, but what actually happens under Canada's system is that you're representing the party. And then in fact, when an MP is elected, they're representing the Queen because they swear allegiance to the Queen. And so these are things that the Marxist-Leninist Party is not in favor of. What we want to see is we want to actually have people themselves come to power, representing themselves, and obviously they're collective. So for example, if you're an auto worker, then you're making those decisions as well. And if you're a teacher, for example, like myself, then we're in there having those conversations about those decisions that affect our lives. So it's a little bit bigger than what currently exists right now. It's kind of beyond, I guess, what exists right now.
Yes, totally, radically different. Well, we still have the same system. So under this system, under which you're running, I'm going to ask you some questions about the Windsor Tecumseh riding.
Sounds
Is that
good.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you think the most important issue is in the Windsor Tecumseh riding?
Well, I think the most important issue is that people are made to fend for themselves. So you have a situation, for example, where if you have the financial means to offer your kids a lot of different experiences in terms of sports or culture, then you're kind of okay. But if not, then that really is left to chance, whether or not they get those skills developed, for example, in terms of athletics, or whether they're exposed to sciences and technologies outside of the school system, right? And so I think that whole notion that we're supposed to fend for ourselves, that we're just supposed to not have anything that's organized to make sure that these things happen, to guarantee that these things happen, that's the biggest issue facing the people of Windsor Tecumseh.
What do you think the most misunderstood element of the Marxist-Leninist Party is?
I think it's that we're fringe and that we're kind of sidelined because of the fact that many of our party has a daily newspaper where we're constantly trying to get people involved in discussion and about the real issues that affect their lives and the politics and what Canada is doing at home and abroad. And so I think that that's kind of the most misunderstood thing, that's not something that people know about, and then as a result, it's kind of a cyclical thing.
What did they say at the door?
People have a lot to say at the door, actually. They're very encouraged by this notion that, that they can think outside of picking a party and going that way. Because our whole platform is that, like I said, people should come to power, not political parties. And so people kind of think about that and they say, well, yeah, because when I have in the past elected this person or that person, I don't see the difference necessarily. So I think that's one of the things that I'm definitely hearing.
You've run at least 4 times. How has the party changed to adjust to what's going on on Parliament Hill?
Well, I guess the party is always, you could say, on the ground, finding out what's taking place and participating in, for example, like myself as a teacher, I'm involved very much in what's taking place in Ontario in education, and so these things aren't disconnected, I guess. And so in terms of changing, well, of course, like Canada's changed in the last 15 years, and so we've changed with it because we're fully integrated in society and in those actions, those fights for empowerment. Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that has been floating in this election is a national pharmacare program.
Mm-hmm.
What's your stand on that?
Well, I think if the aim of the pharmacare program is to provide the people of Canada with the pharmaceuticals that they need as a right, well then we would look at things like developing that information or that research in our publicly funded universities, and we'd be going that way and even developing a full-on national pharmaceutical company. I don't think that's what's being presented. What's being presented is more so that we'll pay for it, the government will pay for it, but it's still going to be privatized pharmaceutical companies, which then means that that's public money going to pay for profit in the realm of pharmacare.
What would you do in Windsor Tecumseh? There's a lot of seniors. What do you propose to help seniors?
Well, I think seniors themselves need to have a voice, just like any other demographic. One of the things I know that would most assist would be even like transportation. So having very reliable, very safe public transportation. So for example, if you were at a point in your life where you weren't able to drive anymore, you still could get around. That there would be things organized for you as a senior to participate in life still, whether that's socially or politically, in terms of organizing different events, and this again not being left up to, well, I have the financial means to say pay for a very expensive private facility when I'm in need of that kind of care. This is a guarantee that all seniors would have.
You're in education. What would you do for young people?
One of the things I would definitely do for young people is make sure that that all of the information that we have at this point in our life basically is able to be passed on. I know there's obviously very specific issues in terms of like food for students. Different areas of the city have very big issues in terms of whether or not food and what kind of food is being provided for students. And so I think that that's a big thing too. And again, kind of goes back to that fend for yourself, that if we can kind of have these things organized, not just like, okay, well, if I'm lucky enough to find out about, this particular food program, then I can get, I can participate in that food program. So that's one thing, is making sure that students' basic needs are being met. Also in terms of housing, I know in Windsor Tecumseh, there are definitely pockets of housing that are very concerning. You have, for example, single moms who are living in residences that are not fit for the number of, say, children and the number of people who are in that space. And so these are definitely issues that, as Marxist Leninists, we believe are rights. Housing is a right, food is a right, and so how do we bring these things into being?
What do you think? Let's go international for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of the renegotiated NAFTA deal with the U.S.?
Well, I think that any deal that doesn't put workers and their safety at the forefront is not something that we can support, in the sense that having a full strategy for these trade negotiations where Canada is not like a subject We're actually, it's trade for mutual benefit. And NAFTA isn't, we're not in that position with NAFTA, so.
While we're on the subject of trade, trade produces jobs. What would you do in Windsor Tecumseh to help retain and attract new manufacturing jobs?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems with manufacturing jobs leaving the country is the fact that governments are constantly funding these private companies to stay here, and we've seen that that doesn't actually do anything. So instead, looking at things like, well, we should have our own industries in Canada that address the needs of Canadians. So whether that be in auto or manufacturing or steel, developing these industries as national industries that actually serve our market would go a long way to having stable, secure, and project as in long-term jobs for the people of Windsor Tecumseh and the people of Canada.
There's also a lot of agribusiness in Windsor Tecumseh, a certain canning plant down the road. And there's still a lot of pockets of family farms in Windsor Tecumseh. What do you propose for the farmers?
Well, I think farming in general has gone to a really big farming industry. So I think those family farms are quite few and far between at this point. And so I guess it's the same kind of thing that like we need food to have sustainable food for our region and then all for the rest of Canada, especially with our long growing seasons and our very fertile soil. And so for the farmers, I mean, I think that the farmers should be in Parliament saying what's required. And so then that way we can have that discussion as a national discussion and say, how can we move Canada forward in terms of agriculture?
What is the most surprising thing the voters are saying to you in this campaign? Have there been any surprises?
I don't think that there have been any surprises. I mean, a lot of people are showing a lot of support for the ideas that we're putting forward, even just being able to think about that and to think about that as a different way forward. And so, yeah, there hasn't been too many surprises.
There's been a lot of talk about the environment and climate change. What do you think is the most pressing issue in Windsor Tecumseh?
Well, our party's program is to naturalize the human and social environment, and so this whole project for, even for jobs and that kind of thing, that these things aren't separate, right? That jobs in manufacturing and in other places aren't separate from what we do to the environment, and so. I think that making sure that people have a say over over their working conditions, have a say over their health and safety, have a say over the products and the chemicals that they use, would definitely go a long way to kind of turning around what's taking place with our environment.
So you keep talking about individual representatives. Would all these people be elected?
Absolutely.
And so this is like one step first past the post, and then proportional representation. This would be super proportional representation.
Well, it's kind of interesting because when you kind of open that space, it's like, well, what does that look like? Does it look like organized geographically? Does it look organized by sector, right? Like, so all of these discussions, you could say they haven't happened yet, right? But we're putting forward the idea that that we need to have this discussion and we need to have people involved in that process to be able to, to basically decide what what should Canada be? What should it look like?
Okay, thank you. We're running out of time, so take a minute.
Okay.
Look into that camera and tell the voters why they should elect you.
Okay, well, I think that the voters of Windsor Tecumseh should elect me because I'm showing what it means to speak for myself, and then also I'm looking to make sure that other people are involved in that process. And I want to let everybody know that we have a website, an online daily website at cpcml.ca, and hopefully you can check it out, and yeah.
Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for once again joining We Politics. We look forward to seeing you again very soon.